Hey everyone, and welcome back to Behind the Post. Our next guest is the social media manager at IntelliFlow, where she oversees the global social media strategy, supports regional teams with campaign planning, and drives the company's employee advocacy program. Passionate about social media analytics and data, she's always looking for new ways to make social campaigns more effective. When she's offline, you'll find her baking, swimming laps, or exploring new travel destinations. So let's welcome our guest for this episode, Agnes Bakondi. Agnes, are you ready to go behind the post with me?
Yes, I am.
Amazing. I'm so excited to have you here. And in our intro, we kind of gave away a small hint about what we're going to be talking about this episode. With your passion for social media analytics and data, you really are the best person to come on the show to talk all about it. But before we jump into all the good stuff, let's start by introducing you a little bit more. What is your story and how did you end up in social media?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. So my story and how I ended up in social media is quite of a funny one because I sort of feel like it was all by accident. So I didn't plan to, I didn't intend to actually work in social media, but then I just ended up being here, and I actually really enjoy it, and I enjoy the ride as well. But originally, I have a degree in journalism, so when I finished college, I wanted to be a journalist, but then I ended up working in marketing. So at that time, my role was quite content focused. So I was responsible for creating content, blog posts, articles, and I still remember that sort of moment when we thought maybe we can promote these things on Facebook. I know it was such a long time ago when we thought of promoting anything on Facebook. But that's in a way that's sort of how it started for me, how I just ended up doing a lot more social within my content role. And then the years after that, I had like a more social focus role. And a few years ago, when I moved to the UK, I had like a truly social position. So it's thinking back, it's been quite crazy to just think about the whole evolution of of I think the whole industry as well, and where it started and where it is now. It's in a way, and I was obviously inside in it in all these changes and just trying to manage and navigate myself. But it's been amazing to see, I think, how far we've come, like as in social media professionals, to get to sort of see this recognition that I think people in this industry get. So definitely an amazing ride, quite a journey. And I feel like, with just the ever-changing nature of it, it's going to be another exciting decade, potentially, looking into the
Absolutely.
future.
It's so
Yeah.
interesting to hear that you've really gone through all the waves with social media. And I saw recently someone said the only constant in social media is change. And I feel like
Oh,
you've really experienced that.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so as we said, we're going to be talking about social media analytics today and measuring your efforts on social. So the first question I want to ask you is, what do you think about the term vanity metrics?
Oh, yeah, very good question. Right in the beginning, I feel like I do feel it's a bit of a controversial thing because I think vanity metrics, or these metrics that we sort of call vanity metrics, have quite a bad reputation. And in a way, when we just think about it, I think the basic ones really, when we think of vanity metrics, are normally the number of followers or the sort of comments, and how we treat it as vanity metrics because it's for the sake of vanity. But I don't really agree with that. So I try not to use the term that much because I think the importance of a sort of like the quote unquote importance of a metric really comes down to three things. And I think number one, it's the brand you manage. It's always going to depend on what sort of brand you have, as like a social media person, what sort of brand you're managing. The second thing is your social media strategy, and also the goals you have. So I think it will always going to depend on these three things, whether you will treat them as like sort of vanity metrics, or you will actually treat it as as just a part of your reports, making sure that it's all balanced out. But you're still reporting on it because you still find it important, and you still find it in a way, something that has actionable insights for your strategy. So I do think it depends on a lot of things, and we probably should like keep a good balance of it. So I try not to use the term anymore, because in the beginning I was very much in the group of who said that yes, it's all for the sake of vanity, but it's because of the brand I was managing at that time. And I think the sort of more experience one gets, I think the more understanding we also get about how we actually treat these metrics. So yeah, I don't really like the term. I try not to use it, and I think it should have a bit like a, a better sort of like reputation around it. But yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, they still hold value. You can still see how engaged people
exactly.
are with you, how well your brand is known from how many followers you have. There's still
Yeah.
value in these metrics. So it's just interesting to hear your take on how you feel about the term. The next question I want to ask you then is, what metrics do you focus on looking at when measuring your social strategy, and why?
So as I said, I do try to keep like a good balance of the metrics I report. So I actually report on how our community is growing, so sort of the follower numbers. Just because again, it's I think in general it's a very like an easy metric to for leadership teams as well to just understand, to get a quick snapshot of how the brand is doing. What are the opportunities, for example, for brand awareness goals and things like that. So I do keep a track of those. When it comes to the content and how the content performs or how the content resonates with the audience, I do find engagement and engagement rate quite important to just keep track of. And I like to treat them almost like things that go hand in hand, because I think sometimes the mistakes we can make is focus too much on engagement rate, but then sometimes not realize that it can be skewed by the formats or the post formats that we use. We do know that there are certain things on LinkedIn as well, or certain formats that tend to have a really high engagement rate. So I think it can get really tricky when we just concentrate on engagement rate itself. So I like to treat it as like a part of the overall engagements, just looking at individual engagements and then engagement rate, and then trying to find almost like those learnings, or like the best way to find the trends. I do like to include like best performing or least performing posts as well. So it's normally quite a granular data, but what I found is that our teams and our wider team actually finds it quite useful to just have a look at how specific posts performed, because when I talk about a certain learning, I think it's easy to understand when I pinpoint it to different posts, and these are the dots that I see, and this is sort of the story or the learning we can get from those dots, so to speak. And I think in a way the context is always going to be important, just trying to have an understanding of what has happened, whether on the platform or just in a wider sense of things that could have affected the performance in any way. And whenever I have like some algorithm updates or different platform changes, I tend to include them as well. Um, not necessarily because it's affecting our strategy right away, or our approach, but I think it's just I find that it's good to keep the team informed. Again, they are quite keen to actually learn about these things, and whenever that sort of pivot comes like down along the road, I think it's just sort of sets it up in a nice way that they are actually aware of it, and they know that this is happening because I've communicated already that this has been a big change, or maybe not as big, but still ended up affecting our strategy in the long term. So these are sort of the whole things that I normally include in my reports.
So then with all these metrics that you have that you include, how often do you look at your analytics and put together these reports?
Yeah, I mean, I try to look at it every day just to get a quick snapshot of how things are going, because sometimes if anything weird is happening on the platform or some sort of a bug, that you might be losing followers or something is not looking good, I think it's really easy to then find those things and try to address it. But when it comes to reports, I normally work on like quarterly and half-year reports. Sometimes I do like a one-off report for specific campaigns, but we do have like quite a robust schedule in terms of having a quarterly and half-year reports. Something I actually recently started doing is creating these automated reports for our regional stakeholders, which has been a super lifesaver for me, honestly. Not to plug Octopus too much, but I find it really useful that I can just create all of these very quick snapshots. I like to call them like bite-sized reports because it's just a very quick overview of how their campaigns are, performing. What are some of the trends that we've seen in terms of different post formats, posting times, most engaging times, um, and they just receive it every month in their inbox. So I don't actually need to do anything. It's automatically going to them. Honestly, a lifesaver, and it's just nice to fill up those those periods that we naturally have between these bigger reports, and just still keep them like a bit updated on what's been going on social.
Yeah, it's good also to keep the clarity between you and your team and your stakeholders so everyone knows
Mhm.
the performance, everyone knows what's going on.
Yes.
And you mentioned that you do it quarterly and half a year. So when you look at these results, how do you use them to inform your content?
Yes, so I normally try to again try to have these try to find these different dots within the performance and the analytics, and then in a way try to find a story between them. So what is going to be how can I connect these, and whatever I see in analytics, I will try to find a reason for it. Is it connected to a specific type of content, or a specific post format that we can then use as a learning to sort of inform our upcoming content. So we do have quite a long-term approach to our campaigns and to my reports as well, which in a way gives us the space and time to experiment and test a lot of things. So we're not, we don't really base all of these um, sort of like decisions on content on like daily changes in analytics. So normally we do look at the long-term result in the past reports, look at the learnings, and then see if I can actually see a trend that's sort of just like recurring and just showing up constantly, because then I can actually maybe suggest a different approach for a content, or maybe to test something else, experiment with a different asset, or maybe like a long form post, and then see how that will perform at the end of sort of that period when that campaign ends.
Absolutely. Like we have all this content that we're posting out on social media, and it's so important to look at how it's performing and look at the analytics. But another way to really understand the analytics, which can sometimes be a bit overwhelming when you just look at all this data, is to, as you're saying, is to drill down into these posts and be like, okay, did this one perform because it had a photo, or did this one perform better because it was a video? And by looking deep into these posts and analyzing, oh, maybe it's because we started with a question, maybe it was this hook, maybe it was this, maybe it was that, can really help you inform your content for the next stage. So it's really interesting to hear how you do it and how often you do. So the next question I want to ask you is, how do you optimize a campaign based on analytics?
Yeah, so as I said, we do have this long-term approach. So we don't normally optimize a campaign while it's running,
Yeah.
but again, once it ends and we're in the sort of like planning phase for the next set of campaigns, I think that's the sort of like the perfect time for me as well to just in a way, look at the big picture, look at the context, look at all the granular data, look at all those trends. Was it just a one-off thing that we've seen, let's say around a case study, or is it continuously performing in certain way that will suggest maybe that our audience is actually really interested in consuming more of that type of content. So I try to get all these learnings from these past reports. And as I said, it's really nice that we have this test and learn approach within the team. And I think all those stakeholders within marketing that I work with are really open to hear about all of these learnings, all of these insights and suggestions, and they really take it on board and try to maybe see things from a different perspective, or try to have a different approach to the next set of campaigns. So I do find that honestly, reporting and analytics has been just such a key thing for me to have with this campaign planning process, because I think at the end of the day, data is going to be like my strongest asset. Like whatever I'm suggesting for for the next set of campaigns, whatever sort of argument I'm taking, if I have the data to back it up, that is just going to be like the perfect way to get that sort of learning across.
Absolutely. It's almost like your blueprint for the next campaign. And I love how you take it forward every time. So the learnings that you have from one campaign goes into the next one, so you can constantly improve. You mentioned earlier in the episode, and there's no way we can talk about social media without talking about algorithm changes, but
Oh,
how
yes.
do you stay informed about algorithm changes and emerging trends? And how do these factors then influence your data analysis and strategy?
I mean, it's honestly, it's a challenge sometimes. Sometimes it can feel like we cannot really keep track of all of these things, because, as you said, I loved how you said it. The only constant is really the change in social media. So there's always something that happens. So I do try to keep track of it by just having these like go-to newsletters that I receive, every day or every week in my inbox. It's just all like a nice uh, run through of all of the recent updates or upcoming changes that's been happening on social and in social platforms. Then I try to carve out a bit of time on like a Monday or a Friday to just really have a focus time, just look at what are these upcoming changes, and just try to assess, is it something that we should in a way be aware of? Is it something that can affect our approach or our strategy? What is the before and the after, for example? So if I think about something that recently happened, was this link preview change on LinkedIn. It was quite in a way a visually significant change. So when something like this happens, I normally just try to assess what stage are we actually, and is it rolled out to everyone? Is it something that we should be pivoting now, or maybe for the next set of campaigns? Does it actually affect our approach? Like what does our own data say? So sometimes it's just really about taking a step back and in a way just waiting to see what's going to happen with some of these changes. And what I found, and this can be really challenging as well, that sometimes not changing things is actually the best approach. And sometimes not doing the pivot right away is just the best way to see how it actually unfolds, and how all of these changes are happening at the end of the day.
Absolutely. There's so many changes and they're constantly happening and they're always going to happen.
Mhm.
'Cause as we said, the only constant in social is change. So like pivoting
Yeah.
everything immediately, like I feel like sometimes I even need to remind myself, take a step back, take a breath, see how it plays out, and then decide how to go forward. Sometimes you have to jump on them straight away. Sometimes I think like you're 100% right in that, to just calm before you pivot. So I know you have an employee advocacy program. How did you use the analytics to set up your program for success?
Yeah, so analytics was and still is like a super important part of our advocacy project, because when we launched advocacy at IntelliFlow at the beginning of the year, it was a completely new initiative for us. So, in the beginning, I really wanted to make sure I have a robust set of templates for all of these reports that I will be producing. Some of these reports will be, for myself as a like a lead and owner of this initiative to just look at. Some of these reports will be for marketing, some of the reports will be for leadership, and some of the reports will be for advocates. So it's all going to be quite different information sometimes what we're showcasing them, because some things might not be relevant to them. And I think it's whenever something like big happens, I think it's very easy to just get people super excited about a new initiative like this. But what I really wanted to do in the very beginning is to prove the value, as early as I can, prove the ROI, justify the resources, the costs that goes all into having an advocacy program. And analytics honestly has been has been the thing to do it for us, definitely.
Yeah.
And to get this early buy-in, it wouldn't be possible if you don't have those data that are actually saying what is the value behind it. And I think that the key is just trying to communicate it in a way that's obviously easy to digest to all of those people who are not in social media 24/7, and just in a way reminding myself that sometimes I need to communicate these things differently, because they might not be as aware of those sort of like basic metrics that we throw around every day in marketing or in social media, and just making sure that I explain why these results are actually beneficial for us.
Absolutely. And I think also when you show them the results and they're like, whoa, this works, or they realize what you can, and you also can realize what you can do to improve in the team, is really important. And a quick side note, because I know we're focusing on analytics, but I know that you also ran a pilot program for advocacy. Do you have any quick tips for our audience on running one?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I think my number one, probably most important tip would be to try to run a pilot with a small group of people, because I think it might be a bit tempting to just roll out advocacy, to the whole business and just in a way be done with it. But I think having a pilot with that almost like a focus group has been super helpful for us, and it just makes it a lot easier to manage, because we're talking about a smaller group. And in the beginning it's really important to keep up the enthusiasm, keep them engaged, sort of communicate all the small wins, all the big wins, what sort of difference they are making, because sometimes they are not aware of all of these things, of how it looks in like from a big picture perspective. So definitely, yes, run a pilot with a small group of people, number one. I think my second advice would be try to find like your champions. So try to find those people who are already out there creating, amazing content, who are already super comfortable posting on LinkedIn, for example, who are aware of some of these social media best practices, because again, I think they can really help spearhead the program. And what helped us is having all of these champions in the pilot just really helped me concentrate on the content instead, sort of like the content strategy that I needed to keep up with, how to elevate it every week, and in a way just how to scale the program every sort of quarter, because I think that's the whole idea, that obviously you can then invite all those people who are different comfort levels, I think, when it comes to social media, but having a very strong group of super confident tech savvy people who are just naturally really open to try new things, and just very comfortable of like trying a new platform, can make a huge difference. And honestly, it was super helpful for us. Probably my third tip would be, and I appreciate it might not be applicable to like every brand or every company, but try to find a specific campaign for the pilot. So honestly, what we did is all of these three. We had a pilot with a small group of people, sort of like these champions, and we really concentrated on just one specific campaign. Because at the end of the day, when I really had to prove the success of the pilot, for me it was really easy to give this side-by-side comparison to stakeholders and just say, this is what happened from the corporate account, this is what happened through advocacy, these are the results, this is the difference, and this is how we can sort of turn these difference into like a success, and this is why it actually matters that we have this advocacy program with our corporate account. And it's not about sort of making it a contest or making sort of giving this message that one is better than the other, because at the end of the day it's all serving the same purpose. It's all about supporting those business goals with the help of our advocates. But I think it just gives like a very easy like side-by-side comparison, almost like a black and white of just pure data of the same posts and how they performed on these two different channels.
Absolutely. And as you said, it's not competition at all. They complement each other very, very nicely, which helps you get to the end results that you want to get to. And especially bringing in the people for a pilot. I'm so glad I asked that question, because these tips are really useful. And to get people in for a pilot, you really need those ones that are just going to run with it and are confident with social media, so you can focus on the rest of it. So those are your best bet when you're picking out advocates for a pilot program. And what you said segues us into the next question I wanted to ask you very, very nicely. But as we said, they complement each other. They're not competing strategies. So when you're looking at your results from your social media pages, like the corporate page and your employee advocacy program, what trends do you tend to see?
Yeah, so I think some of these trends are actually quite generic, or at least for someone who's working in social media, it wasn't actually that surprising, but it was still nice to see, and just nice to see it's like being proven in a way. But I think the first trend, what we see is just the sheer difference in reach. So when it comes to reach of a corporate page and then reach of individuals, again, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone, and I think that's the whole point why advocacy is making such waves in B2B marketing, is because it's there to address this challenge which brands have, that they just cannot reach prospects or customers on social media anymore. It's not as easy as it used to be. So this is definitely something that we actually managed to prove, that individuals, they do reach a lot more people, because it's all about being social at the end of the day, and people want to consume content from people and not from brands necessarily. So there's definitely one trend that we've I was already aware of it, but it was actually quite nice to see in action that yes, it's actually true. But I loved how you put it, that it does complement each other, because again, it didn't mean that one was better than the other, because at the end of the day, it all helped amplify our overall reach and engagement on LinkedIn as well. But definitely one trend that was interesting to see. I think the other was mostly around authenticity. And I know that this word is being thrown around quite a lot. But what I mean is just really how important it is to ensure that advocates in an advocacy program remain authentic and just their own self on LinkedIn. Because what we've seen is that those posts that these advocates took from us, took from a program, but still added their own thoughts to it, added their own insights, sprinkled it with a bit of like their own expertise, their own unique, sometimes a bit funny or quirky tone of voice. It just made these posts so much more successful than some sort of a template that marketing would have given them to use. So I think it's just it's also something that I also try to communicate all the time when I'm talking to our advocates, when I'm onboarding them, is just because they are part of this program, it doesn't mean that they have to have to sound like IntelliFlow. They have to sound like the brand. They the key thing is for them to just remain themselves and just in a way maybe just use some of these content or post ideas we give them as just as a base, and it is really helpful for some people who are not that comfortable on social media. But at the end of the day, they have to sound like how they sound like, and not sort of like a mouthpiece of the brand. So again, it was quite an interesting trend that we've seen. But again, I don't think it's actually surprising, because it's in a way it's all really just, it all makes sense.
Absolutely.
But yeah, probably these two.
And that's why it's such a popular strategy for B2B companies. Because you said
Mm,
with being authentic and the reach goes so much further. Number one, you're reaching more people and you're tapping into different audiences. And number two, having your advocates write in their own voice makes it more personable. And people love to get to know people. So seeing
exactly.
someone post something on their LinkedIn and it sounds like them and their social media, it's going to make people gravitate towards the post more and then to the company afterwards and the company pages, which is really important. And I'm also not surprised at all that those are the trends we're seeing. So with that, we're going to move over to the last question. And I'm really
Mm.
excited to hear what you have to say to this because I know you've been around in social for a long time and you have a lot of experience. So what is the best piece of social media advice you've ever received?
Actually, it's not an advice, strictly speaking, but it's just something that, quite early on, I kept seeing this. So whoever said it, I've honestly have no idea, but it was really fitting, which is social media is a marathon, not a sprint. And I just find it so true because, and especially, for someone who's working on the organic side of social media, and through my whole career, I've been on the organic side of social media. There's no instant results there. Like there's no quick wins. Honestly, it's all about the long term, and it's all about, in a way, just being being patient and just reminding ourselves that that it's actually, the results will come, whatever those results will be, but that's still going to be some type of learning at the end of the day. But they won't come the next day or the next week or in a fortnight. They will come like a bit later. And for, I think, in general, like those of us who work in this industry, we tend to have so much and tend to put so much pressure on ourselves as well, um, that we really have to see these instant results. And I think it's just a nice way to just remind ourselves that it's all about the long term, and it is a marathon, and we will see those results, but not right away, and just in a way just be okay with that. And if something is not working out, then that's completely fine. We just need to get over it, test it, try it again, do it again, and just in a way just not get too bogged down in all of these pressures that we tend to put on ourselves as well most of the time.
Absolutely. I love that advice. And it's so true. And you have to keep changing and keep adapting. And if something isn't working, it just means you tried one thing, you try another thing another time. Maybe try in a different season or move on to a different strategy. And it absolutely is a marathon, not a sprint. We don't have to go too fast. It's okay. We can slow down. It takes a while. And as you said, especially with organic, it takes a while. So
Mm.
I really love that advice. And I love that we left on that note. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for joining me. I've loved having you for this episode.
Thank you so much for having me.